Hi, folks, it's Mark Merrill with Farm. Fairness in the Reporting Media, the Fact Files. Today we're going to be discussing economics and how it affects society. Here's just another example of Democratic shortcuts, ladies and gentlemen, to keep control of Washington, D.C. politics and the rest of the country to keep reeling in debt, high consumer prices, and possibly even bankruptcy for just about every small business from coast to coast. Yeesh. How? Well, because the Dems have lost focus, or maybe even don't care anymore, about getting American prosperity, culture, and dignity back on track. And also stop the belly aching, groaning, and blame against the majority population of hardworking people and do something about it. And their own self inflicted narratives and ideologies that got the country in such a negative financial spiral into socialism to begin with. Now, from our point of view here at Firm, here's what's wrong economically, but also ways to correct our course of destruction into a world power formerly based on peace through strength, diplomacy, and get all people in all demographic age groups, smarten up and join the majority, will you? And get them motivated to respect the American way and help struggling countries to become more self sufficient over short periods of time. But hey, first things first, we got to get our own act together. Blaze Media couldn't have put it better, as you can see right here. Fact versus fake. We've had enough. Let's start with the mainstream media, all levels, shall we? Basically, with this article from Blaze Media, Glenn Beck's organization, Fact Checker's authority doesn't exist, but it sells, and more importantly, is deeply important to the Democratic Party, Democrat aligned media, and to big tech. They weren't done there, however. Trump also called Vice President Kamala Harris Comrade Kamala. It's a little alliteration because it's two ka sounds, as he puts it, and also a political insult for a woman whose very, very, very few economic policy announcements included floating price controls. She's just throws anything out there that comes into her puny little mind. One Washington Post columnist suggested, quote, when your opponent calls you communist, maybe it's time to have your own self-check. But PolitiFact's senior correspondent Amy Sherman was on the case. She fact-checked Trump's crack as pants on fire or as false as possible. Her proposal is vague, she wrote, but its scope falls far short of communist policy. Her issue portfolio consists of mainstream left-of-center views and would be uncontroversial even among right-of-center parties in Europe. Now, this is a favorite issue for Ms. Sherman, who the day before she wrote this, fact-checked Trump for calling Harris a Marxist, comparing the political rhetoric to former Senator Joseph McCarthy of the 1950s. According to this writer, they couldn't find a single instance of Amy or her employer fact-checking Democrats and their media friends' near ceaseless claims that Trump is a fascist. None at all. Or even an enemy of democracy. They don't seem to bother them. But it's not surprising, of course. Fact-checking is a scam to assert some kind of special claim to objective authority. Isn't that what we're supposed to do here in the media, folks? Be objective. Point out all these items right here. Yep, called a scam. But the authority doesn't exist, of course, but it sells, and more importantly, is deeply important to the Democratic Party, Democrat-aligned media, and to big tech, which uses these fact checks to censor everything from obviously false memes to legitimate political opposition. Had to use this one, folks. It's pretty important and it's pretty direct. It makes sense. And still, from time to time, here and there, it can be so stupid that it's damn funny. Now, our friend, once again, here, folks, who's been quite busy with his organization, as you can imagine, the ACLJ, otherwise known as the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, and his staff, they filed lawsuits on a regular basis and launch an unprecedented counter-campaign to defeat the mass deception, to save babies and help women, and get support from the majority of Americans for it. The mass deception is to fight the taxpayer-funded pro-abortion campaign. So far, they've received in their latest action to acquire signatures for their latest campaign, 33,101 signatures in a short period of a few days, averaging about 348 people a day signing up. A far-left state government has partnered with a radical pro-abortion organization using your American tax dollars, folks, to smear pro-life centers and pressure women into getting abortions. Like our friend Wendy Merrill, who has had First Choice Pregnancy Center now under the name of Resolve Life Center here in central Maine. Massachusetts is funding a massive media blitz, spreading state-sponsored lies and misinformation about what they call anti-abortion centers. Talk about just what we talked about. Stupid. Good grief. Are you kidding me? Pro-life pregnancy resource centers are saving babies' lives and supporting women while the abortion industry is trying to unlawfully shut them down. It's an abortion propaganda virus that will spread to every state if we don't stop it. The ACLJ is preparing a massive lawsuit against the government and the abortion industry to defeat the unlawful smears, lies, and deceptions about the clients. Mr. Sekulow says we're also planning to launch a huge counter-campaign in an unprecedented and groundbreaking effort to combat the mass deception, help women, and save babies, and taking urgent action as soon as possible. Once again, ACLJ and our friend here, Jay Sekulow, and his staff, making the moves around the country, folks, to petition to defeat taxpayer-funded pro-abortion mass deception propaganda. Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Jay. Keep up the good work. Before we go into our next topic here, folks, here on economics and how they affect society, one thing that just keeps popping up now and then, we've used this little graphic before from the Washington Examiner, which pretty much shows it exactly as to what it is the defunding of police. The campaign has kind of taken a third or fourth level down on the importance-o-meter by the left and the radicals, because they can't seem to come up with an idea or how to replace the police if they do stop funding them in every single state. Good luck with that. We'll all end up like this lady right here if we're not careful. Or worse. Instead of having a microphone in her face, she'll have a gun in her face before she begs for her life without him around. You dig it? You better. All of you who are opposed to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and especially the Second Amendment, I'd say, get a clue. Now, for the electronic vehicle thing, folks, it's getting to be a little bit ridiculous here. They seem, the bureaucrats, and those in government offices and leadership, like Janet Mills here in Maine, unfortunately for us, they want to threaten society and culture with America's God-given natural in-ground and marine or water source drilling offshore for oil and coal and natural gas. And by the way, while we're at it, restore the Keystone Pipeline way up there in Alaska. Let's get things flowing. Drill, baby, drill, remember? Sarah Palin started it. Donald Trump's picking up the rope of fortuitousness, if you will, and pulling everybody along forward. So let's go. Let's get this done. Enough of trying to kill us by bankrupting us. But with the electronic vehicles here, folks, as you see, here's a good question for everybody, all right? Are electronic vehicles worth the expense, especially if the majority of Americans can't afford the changeover cost? We're going to get to the cost here in just a second. But the push on EVs threatens to strain power grids and threaten reliability. You know, it's not something that's just going to happen overnight, folks. And just like any other plan that the left comes up with, or even the Green New Deal, which started this whole mess way the heck back in the Obama administration, and then Biden picked it up after he stole the 2020 election. It's not going to happen. It can't. Unless everybody wants to be in the dark, and that would be you as well, Democrats. Yeah, I'm pointing the finger at you. Not good law-abiding American citizens, who I represent here with true facts, reality, and common sense at firm. You want to be in the dark? You want to go ahead and have your special little EVs and all your little stations everywhere and have to go charge the damn thing every 8 hours. Oh, sorry, kids, we have to stop and charge the car. Play your video games for a while. Are you kidding me? No. Life is boring enough as it is, having to wait for a train to go by or waiting for an appointment to show up, let alone waiting for the damn car to charge up so we can keep traveling. Intentional. The Biden administration, now Harris's problem, pushed for widespread electronic vehicle adoption back in April of 2023, but threatened even then to place significant strain on aging power grids, threatening the capacity during peak hours of demand and raising the risk of blackouts, as we said. The biggest incentives for electronic vehicles was to include a $7,500 consumer tax credit for electronic vehicle purchases in the Inflation Reduction Act, you may recall, designed to mitigate high upfront costs for consumers, as well as the $7.5 billion in funding under the bipartisan infrastructure law dedicated to building out a national network of 500,000 public EV charging stations. See all those lovely little buggers? Yike. So, remember what that figure was, folks? Well, we're going to refresh your memory. You probably don't want to hear it. Starting costs to get a brand new electronic vehicle from the Ford Manufacturing Company or General Motors was at one point $46,000 just to get a brand new one. Oh, but the cost has dropped. See, because the deflectocrats aren't getting their way over the past 2.5 years. Now you can get a brand new EV for $36,000 with a cap price now of $39,000. But 3.2 million EVs are on the road in the United States today, folks. That's an estimation. representing about 1% of the vehicles in this country. The number is slated to rise sharply in the coming years. Edison Electric estimated by 2030, which is now only 6 years away, that the number of EVs in the U.S. could grow to about 22 million vehicles, a massive increase that will correlate with a strong rise in demand for the power grid. But without proper planning, widespread adoption of electric vehicles could add severe strain to the already stressed power grids, threatening transformer blowouts, electricity shortages, and, gee, you know what? I don't suppose Gavin Newsom thought of that, did he? Aren't they already having brownouts and blackouts over there? I think it's actually even going as far as Nevada. But you see, this is the problem. Threatening not only transformer blowouts, electric shortages, and even requiring the use of costly new power plants to meet the heightened demand. I thought they wanted to go with wind and solar. In order to hit those kind of figures, according to the director of the Electric Power Research Institute, Ronald Schaaf, we have to see a rapid build out of renewable energy from the 230 gigawatts of renewable power that we have today. He says we're effectively rebuilding an airplane that's in mid-flight. Isn't that nice? Jeez. I don't know if I like that. Have to take a landing pretty soon, wouldn't you? As we get closer to the conclusion of this program, folks, we have a few tidbits to pass along to you. If you think it was quite stunning and unimaginable, the threat of Iran terror reaches deep into the American homeland. Hossein Sharia Madari, a surrogate for Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah, vowed in a column published in the Daily Cayenne in September of 2021, Iran would assassinate President Trump for ordering the drone strike that killed Quds Force commander, you may recall, General Soleimani, in January of 2020. Yeah, Iran. How about that? The FBI also accused Tehran, kind of late, of trying to influence the 2020 election by sending intimidating emails to Democrat voters purporting to come from Trump allies to gin up racist allegations against the president and his supporters. Also, a little tag story, folks. Iran's execution of 2 gay men in January of 2021 had been met with condemnation by Iranian American activists and U.S. groups opposed to the brutality displayed by the Tehran regime. 2 men, both 32, were hanged in a prison in the northwest city of Mariga, 6 years after their conviction on sodomy. According to a May 2008 confidential British government cable, human rights activists believe that since 1979, 4,000 and 6,000 gay men and lesbians had been executed in Iran for crimes related to their sexual orientation. Had enough of this crap. A couple more. Second Amendment opponents have already signed or singled out their next biggest target to push to restrict gun transactions, the time-honored tradition of gun shows. Every year, thousands of those events are held across the country, but those who view the Second Amendment as a dangerous anachronism, what the hell, have made no secret of their plan to end gun shows. In some jurisdictions, they've already made surprising advances toward the goal. Governor Newsom Surprise. Signed into state law about a couple of years ago, I believe, SB 264, a measure that makes it illegal to sell guns or ammunition on the property of Costa Mesa's OC Fair and Event Center. But the sponsor of the new law in California, Senator Dave Min of Irvine, made his intentions clear. He vowed to push for a statewide ban, telling the LA Times the state should not be profiting off what is essentially blood money. Does this guy have a clue? Some little tidbits here, folks, that we thought would be appropriate for how economics affects our society in a bad way, which is why we need to have change in government. Majorities, often large majorities of both Biden and Trump voters, expressed some form of distrust for voters, elected officials, and media sources. 76% of Trump voters see no real difference between Democrats and socialists. 41% of Biden and 52% of Trump voters agree it's time to split the country, favoring blue-red states seceding from the Union. That's not going to help any. It's more division. What are they going to do? Become their own countries without federal money? Without taxpayer dollars? Nobody thinks these things out. A couple more. Just for FYI, folks. 60% of all voters see America as less a representative democracy and more a system that is run by and rigged for the benefit of the wealthy. 60%. We'll tell you the source of this in a few minutes, folks. And also, 20% of all voters strongly agree it would be better if a president could take needed actions without being constrained by Congress or courts. Maybe a variation on that could help. The source, folks, for this, these last few statistics, blaming the other party could ruin America, is from the University of Virginia and Project Home Fire, in case you're interested. Sheesh. So ridiculous. Never mind the fact that we need to get rid of all of this right here, all this alphabet soup, which is doing us no help at all. Declaration of Independence, folks, the second paragraph we always refer to. We must take back our country, we the people, and stop. We have the authority. The Founding Fathers and God Almighty to sway, detain, and destroy all usurpations as it was printed here back in 1776. And against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Once and for all. As always, folks, thank you for joining us here on Firm. Check out our podcasts all the time at rumble.com/users/fairnessmedia1, Twitter, YouTube, and also emails 24 hours a day at fairnessandreportingmedia@gmail.com. Blessings and peace to everyone in the meantime.